that the filibuster is a good thing and helps bring us together, I would ask this question: isn't the protection of voting rights, the most fundamental wellspring of this democracy, more important? Isn't protecting voting rights and preventing their diminution more important than a rule in the Senate?
Even so, the two Democrats holding out will not budge. Nor will Senator Manchin support a talking filibuster, which the majority leader said he will propose if Republicans block voting bills again tonight. During her time on the Senate floor today, another Democratic senator illustrated the hypocrisy displayed by her Republican colleagues in their unanimous opposition.
And I can't understand why Republicans would want to make it harder for brave Americans defending our democracy abroad to participate in it. But that's what they're doing. And I can't understand how my Republican colleagues can sit here today and ask paid staffers and pages to bring them water at exactly the temperature they like, with or without ice sparkling or not sparkling, as they make their voices heard on the Senate floor, and then say nothing to stop a law that makes it illegal to give water to Americans waiting hours in line at polling stations.
But that extraneous and ridiculous law, hailing from Georgia, is just one of 34 passed across 19 states over the past year that restrict access to the ballot box. Scores more are pending in state houses, with 2022 midterms around the corner. If the Senate fails to protect America's most fundamental freedoms tonight, just how much trouble are we in? Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Niambi Carter, Associate Professor of Political Science at Howard University, and Ezra Levin, co-founder of Indivisible. So, Niambi, what do you make of what's happening on the floor right now?
I mean, I think these senators have been telegraphing for months what was going to happen. I mean, certainly Senator Manchin have made it very clear that this was a bright line for them that they would not cross. So I think we're just seeing a lot of performance. I mean, a lot of bluster about how we have all these other protections, that it's not that important. Well, if it's not that important, why not pass voting rights? More importantly, if it wasn't so important, why not reissue the formula, right, to bring Section 5 back into alignment with the Supreme Court decision in Shelby County v. Holder? That hasn't been done either. I mean, I think this is just a lot of performance. And no one has yet said substantively what they actually would vote for. And I think that's something that has been noted throughout this evening.
So, Ezra, yesterday Manchin told reporters, "I love the talking filibuster," but he wouldn't support any rule changes by a simple majority that would require the talking filibuster. Does any of this make any sense to you? Is Manchin basically just dancing around looking for a reason to say no?
Charles, I think that about sums it up. I mean, we will see what the actual vote comes to. It hasn't been taken yet. They are currently debating this rules change, and it is a talking filibuster rules change. It gives any senator not one chance, but two chances to talk as much as he or she would like to on the Senate floor to make arguments for or against whatever is being considered. It's the exact kind of reform that we've heard from Joe Manchin he was receptive to for months and months and months. He told his colleagues and donors behind closed doors at a No Labels conference that he was in favor of a talking filibuster. So, yeah, that's what's being debated right now. Now, Joe Manchin can kick up a bunch of dust and ultimately vote against it. I think the conclusion of history will be, oh, this guy was just bargaining in bad faith this whole time, if that's indeed the way he votes. We'll see. We'll see. But yes, this is what Joe Manchin has been saying he wanted to see, a talking filibuster. That's what's been being debated. So ultimately, he's got to vote on it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem here is that the laws that are already been passed, they're not going to stop there, right? So if you don't have anything to stop them, they're going to continue to pass laws until you do, until they hit a wall, until they hit a limit. So we already see that Georgia is going back to take a second bite out of the apple. We now see that Florida is also going back to take another bite of the apple. They're passing additional slates of suppressive laws. And the other problem about this is that you have copycat states. If one state sees that something gets passed in one state, does not get challenged, it does not get struck down in the courts, they say, okay, that's legal, we can do that. How much trouble are we in going forward if this does not pass the Senate tonight?
Well, look, we've been in trouble now for over 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, since Shelby County v. Holder. And I think you're right, Charles, is people are becoming more and more skilled at taking out the voters they don't want, right? So whether it's, we've seen these redistricting schemes in Tennessee and all these other states you list, in addition to these restrictive voting rights laws. I mean, just having people have to take time out of their day to do the most basic things. And we're not talking a lot of this like everybody lives in a city or everyone has access to public transportation. These situations become much more dire when we talk about people who may live on a reservation, or we talk about people who live in rural communities where in order to get to the place, to get the ID they need, to be able to register to vote, you could talk about 2 days worth of travel. I mean, some of these kinds of rural communities, given where you're from. I know them too, where my family is from. And you can imagine what this will create, particularly for older Black Americans who don't necessarily have ready access to documents. And when they do, some of those documents are flawed. Names are misspelled, birth dates are wrong. And we know states are looking for any reason to disqualify Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other voters. So this is going to create, I think, the situation which these laws were designed to do, which is have a chilling effect where people just sort of give up. They don't even try to engage the system anymore because they already know that the deck is stacked against them. And when you think about the fact that voting is something that people have to actually go after, right? It's not something that's just granted to them. We don't have universal registration and all of this. I mean, it just creates this chilling effect. And so people will say eventually, bump this. I'm not going to take the time off. I'm not going to try to locate a ride. I'm not going to miss that day of work or whatever I have to do to engage this system that has already told me it doesn't want me to participate and is already stacked against me. Because if it isn't the voting laws, then it's the districting, right? Which is also working against students, poor people, Black folks, Native folks, and other kinds of people that really showed up in 2020. And now we're seeing all of these states trying to prevent those very same people from showing up again in the midterms and certainly from showing up again in 2024.
Right. So I want to just alert our viewers to what they were just looking at when they were looking at the Senate floor. They are voting right now on a rules change. We do not have audio of this, so it just looks like people milling about. But what you're seeing in that milling and what looks like a very casual scene is a historic moment, particularly for voters in this country and particularly for Black voters in this country who are disproportionately likely to be disenfranchised, both be suppressed and subverted by what is happening right now or what is not happening right now on the Senate floor. They are not going to step in and stop what is happening in these states. Ezra, I want to come back to you. When you look at what's happening right now on the Senate floor, everyone believes that this is a foregone conclusion. Manchin has not changed his mind. He got up with something he had printed out at Kinko's today. He was ready to talk. He was not going to change his mind. He was ready to go. They're not changing their minds. So, what do you think that voters should think right now? You can put in the same amount of effort that you put in last time to go out and vote, or you may have to put in more effort. You may have to drive a longer distance. You may have to produce even more identification. There may be people at your polling place intimidating you and other people from voting. You can put in all that effort, and now on the backside, Republicans are flooding the control of who counts the votes and who reports the vote with people who are hostile to kind of freedom of voting. How should voters think about what they are seeing and what they're being asked to do in the future, which is to have a higher burden, knowingly have a higher burden than everybody else, and just be told, you have to do this because you're our only hope?
Look, Charles, I think everything Dr. Carter just said is right. I think voters should be angry. I think we should all be angry. I think all of us who care about our democracy right now should be angry. But, I think I've been on repeatedly and been a little bit of a voice of optimism. There is a path forward. Here's how we're going to get it done. Everything's could be okay. And I want to say, look, this is bad. And it's not bad because one party lost and we were trying to score political points and failed. No, it's bad because we were trying to safeguard our democracy with this vote. That's what we were trying to do. We were trying to ensure that people have access to the vote, that people can actually exercise their constitutional right. And just to say, I think as a result of this betrayal, and I would call it a betrayal by Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin of their constituents in our democracy, if they do indeed vote the way we think they're going to vote now, this betrayal has consequences, and those are, in the near term, political dysfunction, and in the not too distant long term, more right-wing political violence. We are in a worse position now than we were yesterday as a result of this betrayal. But here's the optimism I have for you. We got two options now. We got two options. We can quit, or we can keep building. Those are the two options. So you wrote a piece today in the New York Times on the Lodge Bill, which was an early version of the Voting Rights Act, and that ended. It failed in the 1890s, but that's not the end of the story. That is not the end of the story. The end of that story is 1965 with the fight for the Voting Rights Act, which ultimately passed. Now we've got to keep building. It's the only option.
I have to jump in with a little bit of breaking news here. Jump in with a little bit of breaking news here. Manchin has just voted with the Republicans. For the moment, voting rights legislation in this country are now dead. Dr. Niambi Carter and Ezra Levin, thank you very much for joining us tonight.